Hey everybody, back in the shop. We are working on David's axles, and he calls his CJ3A Snuggles the Jeep. You've probably seen it around YouTube, Facebook, places like that. And I'm doing the transmission transfer case, steering gear, and axles for him. And you remember that front was real sloppy, but that's apart now. Super grimy in there. And it needs everything, all the bearings and kingpin bearings, stuff like that. Everything's sitting in the parts washer soaking. The rear end, you remember from last time, that the caps were on backwards. So we know we need the ring gear and the pinion, and we harvested that from that axle that Matt supplied. And then I was going to take off the hubs and stuff, and I'm going to set the camera up on a tripod and try and show you what's going on with those. So hang in there, I'm going to set up and be right back with you. Okay, here we are on the right rear hub and drum assembly. There's our nut. Cotter pin is still in there. I haven't tampered with these at all. I haven't taken them apart yet. Now watch what happens when I turn the drum. You see what's going on there? This is all supposed to be solid through here. The nut's on the axle shaft. So something's going on in here. And I believe these were not installed correctly when they rebuilt the rear end way back when. And probably from a bunch of driving, something got messed up. So maybe the key's in upside down, it split the hub. Maybe the key is super worn out. The axle shaft is worn out. The hub is junk. We don't know. But it's super critical that you put the key in right. And I've gone over that plenty of times, and I'm going to go over it again when I do these, when I finally assemble them. It's critical you get the key in correctly and you put enough torque on that nut so you don't get in a situation like this. Now I'm sure we've got damaged parts in here, and it's a good thing we have that other axle, because I think we're going to be using a lot of parts from that. But you can see what's going on here. So that's bad, and eventually it would fail. Your axle would break, the hub would split, the key would get mangled up, and you'd lose drive. So that's the right side. Let's go over and take a look at the left side. I'll see if I can get set up over there. Okay, I'm over on the left side, and let's wiggle that a little bit. You see that nut isn't moving. Look how much slop we got in that hub. So that's bad. But the funny thing is, I get so many comments about how simple the Jeep is, and everything is so simple, and you could rebuild them with your eyes closed. And there's so many guys that give me a lot of grief on how I go about doing things and doing them the right way, and they're like, oh, you could throw that together with, in your sleep. But more and more, the axles that are coming in are in terrible shape. Caps are mismatched, hubs aren't installed properly. It's getting a lot worse than it used to be. Axles used to come in kind of okay shape, but now more people that are saying how simple everything is. You're seeing it right here. A lot of people are messing these up, and this axle, I believe, was rebuilt before David got it. So that had to be somewhere between 51 when it was brand new, and I keep getting this wrong, but I think he bought it in 73. So somewhere between 51 and 73, a bolt got loose, mangled everything up. I believe it was a new ring and pinion put in there, and then they put the axles in, and obviously they tried to put the hubs on correctly, but didn't do it right. So I just want you guys to be aware how fast you can ruin an axle if you don't put the hubs on correctly. It can happen, you know, on your first drive down the road if you don't have that hub on correctly with enough torque and the key in properly. So I imagine when I take these off I'm not going to need a hub puller, but let me get the cotter pins out, let me get the nuts zipped off there, and I will show you exactly what's going on and why you have to really be conscious of what you're doing when you're putting a precision piece of equipment together. So, you know, all you guys that say it's simple, I imagine that your Jeeps are sitting in the garage and they're not really out on the road. But let's try and get this one squared away, and let's see what those hubs do when I get the nut off. Be right back with you. Okay guys, I'll try and stay out of the way of the camera. I'm just getting the cotter pin out here. Hope you can see that okay. And this is what's going to happen here. Just with my hand, that nut came off. That stuff should never happen. That should not happen. So, there's a lot wrong in there. We're going to find out. I'm going to try and get the hub off. I believe it's just hanging up on the brakes. Let me grab a bar. I think it's just hanging up on the shoes, and you can see it's starting to come off. It's just loose, and we got trouble in there. But let me get a bar, and I'll come right back. Try and zoom out so you can see it. Okay, we can see immediately. I hope you can see that. Let me zoom back in. You can see immediately the key's in wrong. You see the tapered part there? This is tapered. And turn that. This is tapered so that the taper in your key goes forward. So what happens when you put it in backwards is that starts riding up the taper and starts getting taller, and then guess what? It splits your hub. I gotta clean this one up again. Well, it's hard for you to see, but I know that this hub is split. Let me see how the key fits in there. I don't know if you can see any of this, but the key is wobbly in there. It's kind of wobbly in the axle shaft. Everything has gone wrong here. Everything that could possibly go wrong by somebody putting this together that had no idea what they were doing, it went wrong. So that key is kind of critical, and a lot of people, they just don't understand that. You've got to put that tapered part forward. And again, I'm going to go over this one more time when I put this back together. But the last person to be in here has completely ruined this axle. Hubs are shot. Ring and pinion was shot. I mean, somebody, I don't know if they took it to a mechanic or somebody did it in their backyard, but somebody has completely ruined this axle. And I'm thankful that Matt had one, because now we're going to probably use the axles, and we're probably going to use the hubs. And there's a disc brake setup going on here. I'm not going to do that. David's going to put that on himself, but I'm going to get it prepped right out to the end, and then he'll put all the disc brake stuff on there. So I'll strip this one down, pull out what I can. I think the only thing we're going to save from the original Snuggles the Jeep is going to be the actual housing. Just the bare housing is probably all we're going to be able to save on this. So, be conscious of what's going on out there, and try not to ruin your axle when you're rebuilding it. So, hang in there. I'll get the other side out, and we'll see what we find over there. Okay, left side hub and drum. Key was in backwards. And just bear with me while I try and get you in here. You see that crack? This hub is completely useless. You see that right there? It's cracked way down here. That key was in backwards. It split the hub. Look at that. So, guys, don't put your key in backwards. This will happen every time. Put the key in backwards in your slot there, and as that gets less, you know, when they finish the cut there, and it's not as deep as way out here, they specifically make that key. Hang in there. I'm trying to do this without the tripod. They specifically make this key with a taper on it. It has to go forward. Both of these keys were installed the wrong way. Both hubs are split. You just see this side a lot better. Look at that. That will happen every time you put a key in backwards. There's not a whole lot of meat left here. Look at how much is there. It's easy to split. So, I'll go over it one more time when I put these together, and you know, try and keep your axles in good shape. And I do get quite a few messages about, oh, I split my hub. Can I weld it and put it back together? I mean, you could do anything you like out there, but it's just not safe. I wouldn't do that. I don't recommend you weld your hub. You know, if it's just a farm Jeep or something, and it's never going on the road, yeah, maybe you could do that. I mean, you could probably run with it split for that matter, but don't weld your hubs. Get a new hub, put the key in correctly, and you won't have any trouble. But this is what happens when you're not paying attention. I'm going to strip this axle the rest of the way out, get the ring and pinion out, and I'm waiting on some bearings to put everything back together. But in the meantime, we get everything cleaned up, and I'll take you over and show you the transfer case. That's apart now too. Okay, transfer case is nice and clean. I've got to turn the drum. Gears all look real nice. So that should go back together fairly easy. We don't have to replace any hard parts. Bearings are in tough shapes, but that's to be expected. Intermediate gear shaft is messed up, and the thrust washers and stuff, so that'll all be new. Here's the front axle, carrier, ring gear. There was the pinion bearing, how it came out, completely disintegrated. So everything is in tough shape. Axle wise, transmission transfer case not so bad, but everything's going back and will be rebuilt right back to factory specs. So no worries on your drivability or long. You'll have a long life with all this stuff once I'm done with it. But long road getting there sometimes. But parts are coming in for the axles, and I'll get the transfer case finished up, and I will take you along closely on the axles, and hopefully save somebody else from making mistakes that don't need to happen. Okay, I just pulled the inner axle seal off the right side of the axle. Now on this left side, it's kind of dark, can't see in there, but they did not put a seal in there. So there was only one seal on this axle. I don't know how it wasn't leaking real bad. But another thing they did, on the bottom here, this is your drain hole. You have your seal, and you have that cup on the outside. If anything leaks through, it drains out this hole, which is completely plugged up because they didn't have their seal or the outer protector there. Let me see if I can dig that out. See that drain there is all plugged up with stuff. That would go over that hole, which is completely plugged up. They had this turned the wrong way. So there's a lot of stuff on this axle that was they completely disregarded, and that's why you have such a bad failure like we had here. So carrier and ring gear out, axles, seals, bearings are shot, and I'm not going to use the axles anyway. The keyway slot is too mangled up. So I'll pop that pinion out, and then we'll move on to some other stuff. Okay guys, I'm just about finished tearing those axles down, so I've got everything in the clean tank. Waiting on some bearings. They should be here today, and while I have some time, I am going to begin decking the block. This is an L head. This is Tom's block, and this one sat for a long time. The head surface around the valve seats and everything is pitted pretty deeply. We're going to take a couple light cuts, see what we get, and I need to get the deck perfectly flat before I can bore it. We want to have that perfectly flat to put the boring bar on, and then I'll bring it over to another machine and we will put the seats in it. It's going to need all the seats, even the intakes, which don't normally need to be replaced, are so rusted and pitted that it's going to need intake and exhaust seats. So first step before anything happens is decking this. So I will get set up and bring you back when we start the milling. Okay guys, first cut, 1/1000th depth of cut, and we just skim over the top, see where we are, and it's a slow process, but I will show you from time to time how things are coming out. Nice slow feed rate is giving us a beautiful finish. And we're going to have to make a couple passes to see some of the pitting in there. But it's cutting all the way across. You have the block jigged up perfectly. Go up, down, front, back. Spinning around nicely. Like I say, it's a light cut, it's a slow feed. Some guys like to hog in the first couple passes and then finish it up with a smooth, slow pass on the end. I like to take light passes and go slow on all the passes. It builds less heat and you get a better surface in the end. So there it is, and I'll show you what it looks like after the first pass in just a minute. Okay guys, here's our first pass, and it cut all the way across, and we've got some pitting right in here that I'd like to get out, and the valve seats, the valve seats cleaned up a little nicer than I was thinking they were gonna, so we might not have to put intake seats in there. So this is how it goes on a block. Exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust, exhaust, intake, intake, and exhaust. That's your, that's how everything's laid out. So, let me pull this off the tripod here. Okay, it's going to be a little fuzzy. Okay, there is an exhaust seat. And the exhaust is real bad, but look how nice that intake seat is right next to it. And all the way down, you could see how the exhaust is worse than the intake. And that final exhaust is real bad. Okay, so what I'm going to do, you see the quality of our finish there. It pays to go slow. I'm going to take one more pass. I want that pitting out of there. We want the air when it flows over and into the valve. We don't want any turbulence there. We want it to go in as nice as we can, so we're going to get rid of this pitting. Got more pitting here and down here. I believe this will clean up in another 0.002. So I'm going to make another pass, see where we're at. Once we get rid of the pitting, we'll take it off here and we'll begin putting the guides in and stuff like that. But I want this very nice before we start. And again, there's another shot. That intake seat isn't too bad. So the seats are just cut into the cast iron on the L heads. We're going to put hardened seats in the exhaust to compensate for today's unleaded fuel. And all the exhausts really need it. But we will make another pass, see what it looks like, and we'll make a decision on how many seats we're going to put in here. Okay, I'll get set up and make that second pass and show you what that looks like when it's done. Okay, here goes the next pass. I have the depth of cut at 1.5 thousandths, and I have a table feed is set at 1¼ inches a minute. So it's a slow feed, and we have that big cutter set at 310 RPM. So those are the settings, and it's leaving a perfect cut, and we're just coming up to the pitting there. Hopefully we'll get all that pitting out on this pass. If not, we'll make one more. Okay guys, we're right at 3.5 thousandths total cut on our block here. All the pitting is out. And we have our perfect surface for our head to mate to. And here's our 2 intakes here. Fully confident I can recut those with the New Way cutters. That's going to need a seat for that exhaust there. Right here, and right here we'll get seats. This intake's a little rusty, but I'm sure I can get that. This intake, I don't know, they did a horrible job here. It looks like there might be the ghost of a line here where this has been replaced with a seat. They did not do a good job cutting it. You can see we've got our nice bevel here, and it's very sharp here. So something happened with this valve at one point. I think you could almost pick it up here. You see where the seat is let into the block. Anyway, something happened here. They changed it. They put a seat. They changed the valve. They did not cut that right. So that'll need to be addressed. But there's plenty of seat left in there. So exhausts are going to get hardened seats. Intakes, surprisingly, came out much better than I thought. Pitting is out of here. and no pitting in there, and we only had to take 3.5 thousandths off. Okay, there's our straight edge on there. Just checking, make sure everything is perfectly flat. And we know it is because I'm confident in my mill. But you can see how nice that is. If you're checking your block, you want to check it end to end, and go diagonally across like that, and then diagonally across like that, and you can see everywhere we're hitting is perfect. So that is perfectly flat and ready to go. We'll get it off the mill and get moving on with the rebuild. So just wanted to bring you a little update on where we're at with the L head. Hope you're enjoying watching your engine come together, Tom. And I got some parts in today, so we'll go over there and see what we have. I've got some engine parts that came in for this engine and some bearings. So let's head over to the bench, see what came in. Okay, here we are over on top of the parts washer, and a few final pieces came in for what I'm going to need for these axles. So over here we have all our pinion bearings and cups, our carrier bearings. I've got a couple speedy sleeves here because we got to fix the yokes. They had some grooves in them. We've got our kingpin bearings there, wheel bearings. Got some transfer case parts, some hub seals, and some axle seals. We got our axle bearings in there. So as you can see, it takes quite a bit of parts to put these guys back together when they're completely mangled up. But that is an expensive bench right there, and it's all going to be worth it when everything is running perfect again. So I have everything I need now to finish the axles and the transfer case sitting on the bench. So everything is here, and I am trying to get everything put together as fast as I can for you, David. So hang in there, and hopefully I can get everything put together and by next week sometime. So let's go take a look and see what we got for the L-head engine build. Okay, I'm going to try and show you this and keep everything in the camera. We needed an intake manifold, and we got a nice old seal tested unit, so that's perfect. Let's see where we're at here. Okay, you can see we got the exhaust manifold here. So we've got everything we need there. I will get these cleaned up eventually and some high temperature coating on them so that they'll stay looking good for a long time. I've got a oil pump rebuild kit here. Oil pumps generally don't go bad. They don't wear out as bad as you think. Some of the new ones aren't up to the quality I'd like to have, so we've got some new pieces here. We've got a new gear for the camshaft, and I'll show you more about this. Some of these seal tested kits will give you a little bit of trouble, but when I go and rebuild the oil pump, I will show you more on that. Okay, I have a Federal Mogul, new old stock cam gear. That's your fiber gear. And I was able to source it's a new old stock crank gear. They really packed stuff real nice back then. So that's going to fix that up nice. I still try and build engines with new old stock parts when I can find them. There's some of that new stuff is just not up to the quality I like. So new old stock for me if I can do it. Okay. And I got a new old stock camshaft. Came in a tube. Just look at the packaging job they did on that way back in the day. That has some thick coating on it. And you probably could have stored that thing underwater. It is really well protected. So, new old stock camshaft going in this engine. And I've got some other things, just standard stuff. I've got some hardened valve seats and valve guides and things like that. What I'm going to start with next on that block is to see if I can clean it up. It's already at 40. I'm going to try and clean it up at 60. Hopefully I can clean it up at 60. If not, we're going to have to go 80. But I'm going to get it off the mill. And that's the next thing I'm going to do to the block. And I'm going to keep jamming on those axles and show you specifically how to put the hubs back together and stuff like that. I've got to go through that, and I'll go through that again with you when I put it together. But they're going to go back together. Transfer case going back together. Same time the engine build's going on. So there's a lot happening. I've got another F-head started. And I am just starting to work on that body tub that came in from Georgia, CJ5, the V6 CJ5 tub. I'm just starting to tinker with that now, and more on that next time. Just about out of time today, so as always, thanks for watching, and I will be back soon, and I'll catch you on the next video.